Welcome to another edition of Upon Further Review, brought to you by Coors Light. I'm joined today, this is Paul Gutierrez, and I'm joined today by a 3-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time first-team All-Pro, but maybe even more impressively, AJ, a 4-time team captain. AJ Cole, punter for the Raiders. AJ, thanks for joining me. And as a captain, I mean, how impressive is that, or what does that feel like to you, a badge of honor, to be voted 4 times as a team captain?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the highest honor that you can achieve. I mean, to be recognized by your teammates as someone that they consider a leader on and off the field, I think is incredible. And I think that you can lead whether you have the C on your chest or not, but I do think that it's a really cool recognition. And it doesn't change the way that I act or the way I approach anything necessarily. But I think it comes with a lot of responsibility, and it's just really cool. And it's something that means a lot to me. And I think some things in the NFL you kind of get used to, but this is not one of them in my experience, and it's very special.
When it comes to being a team captain, obviously you have to keep a pulse on what's going on in that locker room. And watching this reshuffling all offseason with the new GM, John Spytek, a new coach, Pete Carroll, guys this offseason during OTAs and minicamp and training camp, we're talking about they were having the most fun they've had playing football. How would you describe that to fans that are listening? How do you have fun when you're playing football when you're not yet playing games?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I definitely would echo that sentiment. I mean, I think that the way that you have fun is just the way the energy is set and what it feels like every day to come to work. And being around people that are excited is contagious. And I think that is something that you really feel from the staff and from the group of players that we've collected is work is not a job. Work is something that people are excited to do. And everybody wakes up and they're fired up to be here. They recognize how exciting of an opportunity this is, and nobody's going to let the day pass them by without getting the most out of it. And, we do a lot of stuff, Pete's big on competition, right? So we do a lot of stuff to compete. We're shooting basketballs, we're doing jump balls, we're doing all this kind of stuff to compete. And I think that once that just kind of becomes your baseline, I think that that's when things start to get really fun, is because I think that it can get stale when you put too much pressure on the game. And by constantly competing in those silly ways, I think that we establish that that's just how we're going to approach everything. And that just becomes your new normal. And so there doesn't become pressure on the game necessarily. It just becomes another one of our competitions.
What's cool about that, and what I'm hearing there is on a personal level, is that, like, my wife is in the industry as well, sports industry, and I've been covering this team now for 20 plus years. We don't have to go to work. We get to go to work. Is that very similar to what you guys are feeling in that locker room right now, heading into New England for week 1?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that it's never been easier to get out of my car. It's never been easier to put the cleats on. I think that all of those burdens feel really light right now.
So on a personal level, then, you've got a lot of things. You've set the bar pretty high for yourself. Last year, single-season career high, 50.8 yards per punt. It's tied for the second-best mark in a single season in Raiders history. How much pride do you take in that? Is that something that you're actively thinking about? Because it's not simply about kicking the ball as far and as high as you possibly can, right? You want to flip the field, yes, but you also need to take advantage of every situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think that in some ways it is just you're trying to keep the ball as high and far as you can every single time, because those are always good things as long as they match, right? And you're trying to get the distance to match the hang time, and you're trying to get the location near the sideline for the majority of the punts that we have. But yeah, I think it's really cool. I think one thing I've tried to do in my career is, and this is actually something that Pete talks about quite a bit, but I don't really set numerical goals. Mm-hmm. I don't set things that are necessarily accomplishable. Because I think as soon as you get that goal, then it's kind of like, well, what do I do now? So I try and set something that's more like a horse chasing a carrot, where it's something that I can never quite get to. Okay. And so being the player that I want to be year in, year out, that's not something that I can ever accomplish. That's something that's constantly a quest. And I think that there's been some cool accolades that I've had, but none of those have ever been goals for me necessarily, and it's not really what I'm chasing.
When you look, though, the goals, the numbers, the figures, football is a stat-driven sport, right?
Yeah.
And I'm talking to one of the best, if not the best, punters in the NFL right now, let alone franchise history. This is a guy that played tight end and defensive end in high school.
Wow,
everybody.
no ball.
I did a little bit. I did a little bit of research. It's my job. Everybody looks at Ray Guy as the GOAT of punters. He's in the Hall of Fame. I remember watching him play. I remember watching him punt. I remember the stories of him hitting the gondola at the New Orleans Superdome. But when I look at his numbers, and I'm ashamed to say only, I'm not going to say only, but he averaged 42.4 yards per punt. You're averaging in your career 48.6. Shane Leckler, 47.6. I remember Jeff Gossett, 41.3. Marquette King, 46.7. Leo Araguz, Papi Chulo, 42.6. Do those numbers ever get in your head, or are you just out there? I mean, you had an 80-plus yard punt yourself a couple of years ago. If you're not competing with anyone in particular and you're just having that carrot at the end of the stick, do those names mean anything to you in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think the history, this is something I've talked about a million times, but I'll talk about it anytime somebody asks. But the history of the punter position with the Raiders is so cool. Yeah. So to hear my name compared to those guys, the Shane Lecklers, the Ray guys, to hear my name in that same sentence is still something that's really cool. And when I say that I'm not focused on the stats, that doesn't mean I don't still look at them, because it's how you're evaluated. Right. And you know, it's a bit of a subjective thing, right? So like with Daniel kicking field goals, if he makes all of his kicks, he doesn't really need to check the leaderboard. He's in first.
Right.
You know, but the punter position is interesting because there's no real theoretical limits on how far we can push this thing as punters. Yeah. And, you know, in baseball, if the outfield fence is 410, you don't get any extra credit for hitting it 550. Oh. But with punting, I get every single yard. I get credit for every single tenth of a hang time. So there's no real theoretical limit on what can be done. And so continuing to push those boundaries, and as we're learning more about sports performance, I think we're learning more about the technique of the game and the way that those guys punted at the time. I mean, what Ray Guy did in his era, and you know, the coffin corner, and I mean, he really is the first one that was consistently hitting these turnover spiral punts. Okay. And you know, move into like Shane Leckler, and he was just smashing the ball downfield in a way that nobody had ever seen before. And so, you know, I think that the goalposts kind of keep getting moved. Literally. And so I think that's awesome. And so to be a part of that is really cool. And I think it's one of those like cheesy Isaac Newton, like shoulders of giants kind of a deal, where there's no ability for me to do my job the way I do it if those guys didn't go before and kind of show the path.
You're not just a punter, though. You can throw the ball a little bit. Last year you spun it. You had your first career passing attempt, 34 yards on a fourth down. How much pride did you take in that?
Yeah, that was a blast. That was so much fun. Yeah, I mean, getting to throw a fake is like, that's the dream. That's like what you just go to sleep the night before and you're like, I really hope we call it. And it's the least nervous I've ever been for any play ever. It's the most excited. There was a couple opportunities like leading up to it where I thought we were going to call it and we didn't. And so as soon as they said the play call, I was just so juiced. I mean, getting to throw a pass in the NFL, like, you know, everybody wants to be a quarterback. Sure. Like nobody really is 5 years old being like, yeah, one day I'm going to be a punter in the NFL. But everybody's like, I want to play quarterback. So to say that like I got to complete a pass in the NFL is just super cool, and no one can ever take that away from me.
Well, what no one can take away from you right now, at least, is that you're still calling the coin flips as well. When you and I talked at length about your process doing that, you're 2-0 in the preseason, my friend. So what, again, just I guess you just had to kind of boil it down. What is your process when you go out there? Tails never fails. Head, you know, what is your thought going out there?
Well, Gino called it in Seattle.
Okay.
And we figured that was a little bit of, he knew the atmosphere. He knew the wind conditions. He knew the altitude, all those kind of things. I've only been there once. Maybe twice, I guess, including another preseason game. But he called that one. And there is a method to the madness. I don't know if I can necessarily reveal it because there's a chance that enemy spies are watching this podcast and they can maybe try and rig the deck. But I will say that I like to know whether it's a real USD. Can I exchange this? Is this currency or is this a memorabilia coin?
Different weights.
Like different weights. I like to know. Sometimes they do like a little, like a sort of like a one-time limited use coin, but they leave it in the case and they'll just tape like a little T on it. So I like to know that. I like to know the weight. I like to know all of those kind of things.
That's going to alter which side is heavier.
it alters the vibes, and the vibes ultimately dictate the heads or tails.
Perfect. And we'll close it out with this because you're a very, very much a vibes guy. I looked up the day you were born. I remember what I was doing that day. I was watching a Raider game.
Okay, nice.
November 27th, 1995, Monday Night Football, Raiders at Chargers, San Diego at the time. You were born to be a special teamer because the Raiders that day and the Chargers, nothing but field goals.
Really?
12-6, nothing but field goals and punts. Jeff Jager punted 3 times, 112 yards. He only averaged 37.3 yards a punt. Darren Bennett from the Chargers, 5 punts, 200 yards. I mean, this thing was written in the stars from the day you were born, man.
Yeah, it must have been. Maybe my dad was watching it being useless in the waiting room thinking, you know what? This kid may have a future down this path. Let's see if I can coach him up. Awesome.
AJ, thank you so much for your time. And again, good luck this season and good luck in New England.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Welcome back to Upon Further Review. I'm your host, Paul Gutierrez, and I am very thrilled to bring in our next guest, not just this week, but every week going forward here in the NFL season, Cynthia Frelund of the NFL Network. But Raider fans are very familiar with your work from numbers to know, Cynthia. So as we get ready to jump into the NFL season, the opener at New England, you and I were talking a little bit, and there was one number in particular that kind of had you feeling some way about something. What was that?
Well, there's this number for Geno Smith for how many touchdowns he's going to throw this season, and it's 20 and a half. And I think that's preposterous. Like, not even just ludicrous, preposterous. That is such a low number. Maybe it's like, an incentive. You guys are in Vegas. Maybe you could explain it a little bit more than I can. But I think that number is wild. It's not even 1.5 touchdowns per game. I think this offense is going to be high octane. And when you improve the run game, you also improve the passing game. So both things work hand in glove. And I'm just like a big Geno lover. Like I'm a big Geno stan. I've actually never met a single NFL player who has a bad thing to say about him either. So it's just I'm sitting here being like, come on, like 20 and that's 20 and a half. That's like Thanksgiving time.
What gets you kind of worked up, not worked up, so to speak, but what has you excited about that number being way more than that?
Well, a couple of things. One, I love how Chip Kelly orchestrates offenses. When I look to see, that if you watch the evolution, college is not the same as the NFL. So don't go back to like NFL stuff and say, all right, you're just going to go back to those ways. No. Chip Kelly is a mastermind of evolving and growing. His evolution, it reflects using players to the best of their ability. So if you have a guy like Geno is deadly accurate on the deep ball, especially when he's under pressure and on the run. No one's been better than him. Deep balls, under pressure, on the run. I only went back as far as 2020 because I just couldn't keep going. I had to do some other stuff too, but ultimately no one even touches him. So it's a very cool, thing to see Geno. 2022, you saw it for sure. But being able to have that chess piece for Chip Kelly is just going to make it a lot more fun. And I just think this offense is going to score a lot of points.
What's interesting, Cynthia, is during the preseason being able to sit in on some of the production meetings, especially the opener. Chip Kelly spoke a little bit, and he said, and it makes all the sense in the world, but it really resonated with fans on social media when he said that his offense is not, he doesn't try to make players fit his offense. He wants his offense to tailor to the players' talents at their disposal. Makes all the sense in the world, but why doesn't everybody simply do that, especially with somebody like Chip Kelly that's been in every level of football?
It's like the get off my lawn problem, right? Okay. Some coaches they just don't want it. We've always done it this way. I always do it this way. This is this. You do see that. And, we say that football's a copycat league, right? Well, you can't always copy things if you don't have the right personnel, even though some people try. There's a lot of people that come from the McVay, Shanahan, I guess Kevin O'Connell, that tree, right? LaFleur. They all kind of do some similar stuff. A lot of pre-snap motion. Mike McDaniel. Okay, I don't want to forget him either, right? But, you see some of this pre-snap motion, all these things that you've have gotten trendy. Well, to me, if you don't have the right personnel in order to execute that, you can run ahead of the snap as much as you want to, but does it really give you the things you're trying to do, which is a tip off of what the defense is attempting to do? Does it really work if you're just emulating, or do your players actually, I'm scared Ashton Genty will light up my linebacker and just have all of the yak in the world, because I've seen him do it. Watch anything he did in college. He had more yards after contact than any other running back had total. So when you're watching that inspires fear. So if he's moving ahead of the snap and you get in with a full head of steam at the time the ball is actually handed off to him and going, like, that's scary. So that's going to actually change defenses. But if you don't have the threat of something that's going to burn you, I don't know, it's just like, all right, you guys can make yourself tired. Like your kids, right? Go ahead, make yourself tired, fight each other. Totally fine.
When it comes to Ashton Jeanty, though, what's interesting is there was kind of that, I wouldn't even say it was a controversy, but there was a talking point during the offseason. Is he going to be standing up? Is he going to be down? And we've kind of really haven't seen how that would affect somebody in the NFL. Was that much ado about nothing this offseason?
Yes. I mean, I feel like I'm going to say, like, not that I don't care, because I care very much, but I think, like, if Chip Kelly wants to bring some of the things he learned from a masterful season at Ohio State to this next level, why not? Like, okay, like, who's going to be mad if it works, right? If you're averaging 5 yards a clip, I don't really care how you go, right? So, I mean, sure, we can get mad about it. You know, like this is like, these are actually caviar problems, right? Like, this is a great problem to have if you're like, oh, is he going to be down? Is he going to be up? Like this? Can he catch a ball into this? Okay, these are caviar problems.
I don't think I've ever heard it referred to as caviar, but I'm assuming it's the same thing as first world problems, and I totally understand that. What excites you specifically, though? I know we've mentioned Ashton Jeanty, Brock Bowers, first team All-Pro tight end as a rookie. I mean, Geno Smith, you're a fan of his, obviously, and as your title says on your Wikipedia page, you're a specialist in, I got to look this up, make sure I got it, a specialist in predictive analysis. What do you see as Oh,
yeah. Look, when you spend a lot of money getting a master's degree, like studying offensive linemen, then you can get that little nod on the Wikipedia page. It's like, ha, that's what all that money was for, you know?
So when it comes to having that title and looking at this offense, what really gets you excited about these guys? I mean, we've talked about Ashton, we talked about Geno, Brock Bowers, and then we can get into the receiving core after that.
I think that the word I would use, if I had to sum it up with one word, it's multiple. Right now you have, last year, the offense was not multiple, decidedly not a rushing threat on most downs. I'm not saying something that I think is controversial here. And now you have, on every single down, you have the threat of the run. You have the threat of a lot of different types of passes, not just Brock Bowers and Yak. You have a lot of different ways that you can target defenses that are specifically tailored towards getting guys open in space. So separation, Brock Bowers is, and I love Brock Bowers. He's one of my favorite players to track, but I think his presence will actually help make guys like Michael Mayer have a more impactful presence, because he's going to command so much attention that other people are going to get open. So it's not just the first order effects of having a Brock Bowers, it's the second and third order effects where you're now, okay, are the Raiders going to run on us? Are the Raiders going to pass? Oh, no, like, I don't know. And the more the defense is confused, the more multiple options you have, the better chance that you're going to get that first down.
So heading into this season opener, I mean, obviously New England has rebuilt itself. The Raiders have rebuilt themselves under Pete Carroll and John Spytek. What kind of trends can you sense going into this opener of things to look out for, especially from the Raiders offense?
So if you look at the Patriots defense, they have a couple of, so right now, as we're speaking, Christian Gonzalez is maybe playing. He's a great corner. If he's not playing, like, that's better news for the Raiders, right? So he's at least been injured. He's working off to the side. That was the latest injury report I saw on him. But I do know that there's no more Jabril Peppers. So there's going to be youth at the safety position. These defensive backs, especially if you don't have a full force Christian Gonzalez, is going to be a more difficult task than, you know, an easier task, more difficult for them, easier task for Chip Kelly to handle. Like, that would be a nice help if you can get some, targeting especially that safety level where it's going to be forecast to be quite young who's playing there. So I think mixing in some of those deeper passes, so a foundation of unsexy first and second down things, meaning just get it yourself into third and short, right? I think that if I'm saying what the like high level game plan is, it's like don't make third down this thing where we're tipping off the defense what we're going to do. Make sure that whatever front, Mike Vrabel is going to bring a very hefty front at you. I mean Harold Landry's there. Like they changed it in the mold of who Mike Vrabel is, and he is a mean old linebacker. So when you're looking at that, you're going to see a little bit of like, okay, well, how are we going to handle that? Well, if the back end's a little bit cleaner, great. We know Gino can handle that. And we know Gino is not afraid to win in the fourth quarter. We know he's not afraid to make game-winning drives. Like he's unafraid.
So when we're talking about the Raider offense, you got the new quarterback, Geno Smith, who we're a fan of, obviously. Ashton Genty, fan of him. Brock Bowers, great. The receiving core. Interesting. Jacoby Myers going there. I'll read this to you. I want to make sure I got it right just to get your reaction on this and to see how this could potentially affect the receiving core. He was asked today in the locker room about the reports of the trade request that he said. He says, quote, "I asked. They said no. That's where that stopped." Then he laughed and said, I'm just going to keep doing my job until something shakes out either way, honestly. I don't know which way it's going to go, but I'll be ready for whatever.
Jacoby Myers is a professional. I don't think sometimes wide receivers can get a little angsty after. We've seen it other places. I don't actually, in my limited interactions with Jacoby, it is not beneficial to him if he does eventually want to be traded to be a diva or to not participate in a way that would be helpful. Like he asked, they said no. I mean, that kind of thing happens, and I think he'll want to go out there and do his best so that should a potential trade partner materialize, that there's a lot of value there for the Raiders to thus make it worth their while. So I believe him. I think he's a pro. I don't think he's like a weird personality guy. I think a lot of people on this team are absolutely taking Pete Carroll's, everything Pete Carroll is saying to them. I think that they're believing, meaning I think this team is full of pros. The vibes were so different this year than last year. You can speak to that even more than me, but I did go to a lot of training camps this season, and it felt quite different. It felt like it was a day at the office. It wasn't, no one was messing around. Like it was a great, focused, competitive training camp situation. So I think he's going to be fine, but I feel like, again, sometimes people play daily fantasy. I don't know, whatever. I'm not allowed to. I work for the league.
I just say no to fantasy anyway, but it's always good to talk about it. When it comes to the Raiders and Patriots, a lot of familiar faces on both sides. From the Raiders side, obviously Jacoby Myers, former Patriot. You look over there at the Patriot side, and the biggest one out there is on the sideline, or is he going to be up in the box? Not sure where he's going to be. Offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels. What do you think he's got up his sleeve for the Raiders? Not a lot of players still left from his tenure here, but what do you think he's got up his sleeve for the Raiders?
I would guess he's probably going to be in the box. I would say, look, Josh is a great coordinator. Like the coordinating position is where he thrives. And when you're looking at what he has with a remade O-line, they got, remember we talked about Will Campbell's short arms?
Yeah.
He's going to be okay. Like, it's not fun to line up against any of these pass rushers, but Will Campbell is a huge upgrade for them at that left tackle position. Drake May looked like he was in a great position to take a big step forward. So I think what you'll probably see is, it's funny because there's some other things too, like Travion Henderson is someone that Chip Kelly's very familiar with, right? So I think that in that case, what you'll get there is you'll see some of those shorter passes, Travion Henderson. Keep it easy. Stay the heck away from Max Crosby. Max Crosby was one of the best run edges in terms of defending the run that we've seen, and it just stay the heck away from him. I don't think Josh is going to make it overly complicated for Drake May. I think it's going to be a lot of, back to the old Patriot way, which means everything making 11s, even when it's not 11s, meaning 3 wide receiver sets, even if you're using a tight end as a wide receiver, or even if you're using a running back as a wide receiver, it's all just 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets, even if that's not what they're technically listed at on the roster.
Interesting. You said the old Patriots way. My mind went someplace else, but I don't know if we can go there for what the Patriots used to do, and they were known for a while ago. But league-wide, you mentioned you went to a lot of different training camps. Yeah. What's kind of a theme that you kind of picked up on, like one big takeaway that you saw, whether it's one specific camp you were at or just league-wide?
That's a great question because I was trying to like put together some things I think we'll see this season. I brought up one of them already, which is teams that are really clever about at the time of the handoff having someone in motion, not just pre-snap motion, right? Like that's where someone stops, right? But I'm talking about where you have a guy in motion the moment that snap that's happening. I think that we'll see a big increase in that because there's a lot of uh, questionable O lines, right?
Mhm.
So that's one of the ways to kind of get the ball out quicker and be sort of an O line beater. But I think that's one thing we'll see. But one of the other things I see is some return to uh, things that we saw in the past. Football is super cyclical, right? So we see some of these newfangled things, and then you see some things like simulated pressure, for example. That last year that was like a huge deal. Now I think we see like teams who can just beat you with 4 are going to crush you. Like I just think we go back to some of the back to the basic stuff, just like we saw running through, in the right next to the guard, right between the center and the guard, like right through that A gap, like do some normal what we think of as old school football things. I think we'll see a lot more of that, fewer outside runs, and that will be great for a guy like Ashton Genty. So for me, it's like which part of the pendulum are we swinging on? And I think in some ways we'll try to overcome suspect O lines, but in other ways we'll see just doing the things where because a lot of teams now have off-ball linebackers where before they didn't. They use a ton of defensive backs. Like they're playing nickel and dime at like crazy high rates. You know what happens then? Great, you give me a light box, I'm gonna run. So
Right.
I think we see like the reversion back to some of that stuff too.
Cynthia, great stuff. This is going to be fun all season long when we get together.
It's gonna be
and talk on
so
this. It's fun. And we're going to hit on everything that we need to hit on. What should Raider fans be looking forward from you coming up on Numbers to Know?
Yeah, so this week it's on Gino, my guy. I don't know why he's my guy, but he's our guy, all of our guy. How about that? This week's on Gino. Every week we'll take a look at one player through the lens of like some of the cool data. Obviously, in the beginning of the season, it won't be super surprising because we got to, figure out what the team looks like. But as the season goes on, it's going to be some of those tricky little stats that you're like, wow, did you know that this linebacker has missed exactly 0 tackles all season long? Like these are cool things you can tell your friends. You don't even need to give me attribution. You could just say that you were tracking it yourself. Fine by me. I'm good with that.
Awesome. Cynthia, thank you so much for your time. For Cynthia, I'm Paul, and earlier we had AJ Cole on here. So everybody, thanks for tuning in, listening, watching, and stay with us. We're going to do this all season long.